Hey y'all, it's Dave Peretz, the Fund CXO and founder of Signal Fund Services. Today, we're on episode 10 of our Minimum Viable Venture Fund Operations series. We're going to be talking about how to manage data regardless of your fund size. So if you're a GP, LP, fund operator, or service provider in the venture ecosystem, this series is for you. We're going to be pulling back the curtain and sharing how modern venture funds are built and how they operate. So in today's episode, talking about how to manage data, we're going to go through the different sources of data, what they do inside of a venture fund, and how we manage all of that in a system. All right, so let's start with the sources of information that flow into a venture fund. All right, you initially, when you're closing the fund, you're originating, you'll have some foundational data, names and dates, locations, things that will help in other workflows like tax or registration, compliance. You need to make sure that data is saved down, you've got it locked down, and it's in a source of truth, right? And as you go and invest, you're going to collect lots of new types of data. Multimodal, you'll get Excel spreadsheets and PDFs, PowerPoint slides, video, text messages, emails, all kinds of information on the deals, your diligence, and in company updates as these companies grow. There's going to be a lot of information that has to be processed, refined, presented up to the right decision makers for the right decisions at the right times. And that is an incredibly complicated process to make work. And so we're going to talk today about how to get control of all these different sources of data, right? So the way we ultimately work is building towards a system that processes this. It's a series of workflows, tools, and people that kind of help us manage all of this, right? So as I mentioned earlier, you're going to have foundational data, things that are known, that are written down, that you use as the baseline or foundation for other workflows and analysis. You're also going to collect in information that's important to help you understand where you are throughout the life cycle of your fund, these rates of changes. They might be about you and your firm. They might be about your portfolio company. They might be about the market at large. And you're going to have to understand how fast or slow things are moving, right? You're also going to have comparative analysis within your portfolio and within the investable set of companies that you look at, right? So all of this information needs to come in, needs to be refined, and needs to be presented up at the right time to the right decision maker. Right? And then you'll use this system to process this data. You'll use it to make fundraising materials. You'll use it for your quarterly reporting to LPs, your own internal portfolio management and decision making. You'll use it for valuations, which are connected to many important workflows. And then ultimately, if you're audited, there is a tremendous amount of data and information requests and analysis that go into successfully passing your audit. All right. So what do we build with one of these types of systems, right? So what I see emerging managers with today is a series of tools that are representing a database. So think Google Sheets or Excel, think a Omni or a Dropbox where you're saving down basic documents. There's different ways to do this. You also have checklists that are user created. We see a lot of people building an Airtable in Excel, things like onboarding checklists or quarterly update checklists, things that help you keep track of the tremendous amount of data that's coming through your firm. And then we get into the reports and analysis. So you build a database, you store the data, you clean it, you make sure it works. You build checklists to help you control the process and make sure that you're repeatedly doing the right thing. Then you use that data in reports and analysis. And I see emerging managers using powerful tools like Tactic for fund modeling and doing reserves analysis and follow-on analysis, all those kinds of really intense, deep thought exercises. You need to find a way to kind of help you and your team think through these pieces. All right, so what do we build? What do we envision something like this working through? So we just talked about some tools, Google Sheets and Excel, Omni and Tactic, right? But we also need to talk about the workflows, the behaviors, the people involved in making sure all of this information flows through in a system, right? So we think of it as almost 4 parts. There's the orange box. This is the data cleaning, the weekly and monthly, admin rodeo is what we call it, where we want to make sure that we've recorded down any new investments, any new LPs into the portfolio. We've captured any new pieces of information about the portfolio companies, whether there's a subsequent funding round. We want to capture all that information and make sure we clean it and it's always ready for the review and analysis. So once a quarter closed, we start a quarterly process, right? Right away, we're able to understand what we as an investment firm have done. We know what checks we've written to what locations, to which companies, the types of founders. And so we can start building some analysis that we'll use to report out to our LPs, things like pacing analysis, concentration analysis, and are you sticking to your investment plan, right? So we understand that. Then throughout the quarter, our portfolio companies will report up. We'll get to participate in board meetings or as observers. We'll get to talk to the founders and update calls or with other investors that we know are close to the process. We'll collect up a tremendous amount of information and host an internal portfolio review. And this helps us as a team understand where to allocate our precious resources, our time, our additional capital, and our social capital, our introductions and networking, right? So how we allocate that to the portfolio is based on the data that we collect up and the decisions that we're able to make on that. Well, inevitably after that meeting, that portfolio review, there's more questions still. There might even be another board meeting that's delayed. There will be requests and actions that fall from this to go follow up. And so we'll take that time and come back right as the quarter is ending and do a quarterly valuation assessment. We're trying to make sure we understand if anything has happened to these companies that we need to mark, or if there's been significant activity that we need to adjust our own valuation on. And so we do that deliberately, and we do it in a way that doesn't overwhelm the team, but enables these other workflows like your fund admin and quarterly reporting, or your audit and prep for that audit. All those other workflows need to happen. And so we want to make sure the information is flowing out to those other portions. All right, so all of this system is constantly being refined, is constantly being worked on. And that's the key to this. You need to build a set of workflows, a set of behaviors, integrate in a set of tools, identify a leader or a person responsible, and then make sure that you're treating your information like the precious commodity that it is within your firm. All right, so if you've got any questions about how to build a portfolio management system or a data tracking system or best tools for analysis, we're here at Signal Fund Services. You can please reach out on LinkedIn or email me at Dave@Signal Fund Services, and we'd happily discuss this with you. We'll see you out there.